Hey guys, it's Miharu and happy Valentine's Day. Last year I did a ranking of the best love interests in the Ratchet & Clank series, so I felt it was only right to do the same for Spyro. However, with this franchise being quite different in terms of character presentation and Spyro himself showing barely any interest in romance if at all, this list is going to be much shorter and not as in-depth. But gotta work with what I have. So today we'll be taking a look at 5 female characters from across the franchise and determining who would be best for our purple hero. Just a disclaimer, this is obviously for fun and entirely subjective. Okay, so starting off, we have the very first major female character introduced in the classic series, Elora the Fawn. Making her debut in Spyro 2, Elora quickly became one of Spyro's closest allies during his time in Avalar, providing him with valuable advice and helping him navigate the challenges posed by Ripto. She came across as a natural leader, coordinating efforts to save their world while also showing a playful side, especially in the Reignited trilogy. She also made a brief cameo at the end of the third game, expressing her hopes that Spyro would visit her in Avalar and standing with him to watch the fireworks show. While there was some implied romantic interest in Spyro in the original, particularly in this epilogue picture with the caption, "Spyro missed his chance with Elora," I personally never saw anything other than a grateful friend, even when she gave him a thank you kiss. In Reignited, however, her crush on him was heavily amplified, especially in the Year of the Dragon scenes. And the interesting thing is, despite Spyro's reaction to Hunter and Bianca, he seemed to reciprocate the feelings. I mean, look at the way his face lit up when she kissed him. And he even moved in closer when they sat together. These small details make it much more obvious. Now for the score. I'm giving Elora a 4 out of 5 for significance. She was a pretty important supporting character, though she mostly worked behind the scenes, making decisions that affected others rather than taking direct action, something that wouldn't happen until Crash Team Rumble. As for her chemistry with Spyro, it's different depending on which version you look at. The original was more platonic leaning, while the remake emphasized a potential romance. But since the former still technically gave an implication, joking or not, I will give it a 4 as well. Next we have Sheila, the kick-ass kangaroo from the Alps. First appearing in Year of the Dragon, Sheila was the first of the 4 critters Spyro rescued on his adventure. After letting Moneybags know there were no hard feelings, she jumped in to help Spyro out by lending her abilities in various minigames throughout each of the homeworlds. She's also the one who informed Spyro of the situation in the Forgotten Realms and why the magic was fading away. She made 2 more appearances in the GBA games Season of Flame and Attack of the Rhinox, playing largely the same role in the former and acting as a quest giver in the latter. Sheila's interactions with Spyro were nothing to write home about. Sure, I can imagine she was pretty thankful that he freed her from that cage, especially considering she was about to face execution, but that didn't amount to anything, as it's just casual chatting from that point on. They didn't even get much chance to really converse outside of 2 cutscenes in her debut appearance. I'm gonna give Sheila a 3 out of 5 for significance. While she doesn't really add much to the main plot, she did fill Spyro in on what was going on. In a way, it was kind of a parallel to Bianca breaking things down for Hunter, which is interesting. Plus, having her as a playable character was kind of a big deal since she was helping rescue the eggs, so that's something she has even over Elora. As for her chemistry with Spyro though, I can only give it 1 point. They're friends, they get along, but that's about it. Even in Reignited, nothing was changed. I definitely don't see sparks flying between these two should she make a return in the future. Next up is Ember from A Hero's Tale. There's not really a lot to say about her. While often thought to be the Amy Rose of the Spyro universe, as they're both pink and have unrequited crushes on the main character, Ember didn't actually have much personality beyond that. She popped in, declared her desire to marry Spyro, and then pretty much vanished. The only other time we saw her was in Shadow Legacy, where she acted relatively the same way before receiving a love letter from an armadillo named Bandit and proceeding to fall in love with him. Despite this, it didn't stop fans from shipping her with Spyro. A big part of this is that she was the first young female dragon introduced in the series. We wouldn't see another one of those until 2 years later, so Ember stood out at the time, but not necessarily in a good way. As for her score, she gets a big fat 0 for both importance and chemistry. She didn't contribute anything to the plot in A Hero's Tale or Shadow Legacy, she was just there. And if she weren't, nothing of value would be lost. And when it comes to her interactions with Spyro, all we had to go off of were her delusions that he returned her feelings. He doesn't even speak to her, all he does is turn to the camera and say, He treated her no differently than your typical NPC. It can be inferred that perhaps they were friends, but that just wasn't made clear in the game. So while I do have a soft spot for characters like Ember, she's absolutely more of a footnote than a love story waiting to happen. I'm going to assume some of you just skipped directly to this part of the video, and if so, welcome. This is the Cynder section. There's not much more I can say about this character that I haven't already covered in previous videos. Initially serving as the main antagonist of The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, Cynder would go on to essentially become the female counterpart of Spyro, with her own backstory and unique abilities. The moment she was introduced, she was an instant favorite. Cynder brought something fresh to the table, not just as a villain, but as something fans had been wanting to see for a long time. Hell, she meant so much to the fandom and the series as a whole that she actually came back as a Skylander. As I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest reason people gravitated towards Spyro and Ember as their main ship was that she was a young female dragon. It didn't matter if she had no substance. Cynder, on the other hand, did, and many of those shippers now found themselves shifting their focus to the better character. What a lot of fans love about Spyro and Cynder's relationship is that even though Spyro didn't explicitly show romantic interest in her, it just felt right. Sometimes it's just about the characters simply being there for each other. Cynder stood by Spyro during his lowest points, and he in turn saw the best in her even when she was struggling to see it herself. Much like Ratchet and Talwyn, their connection didn't need to be over the top. It was subtle and sweet, a meaningful bond based on redemption and emotional growth. I'll admit, I'm a bit biased toward this pairing myself, but I won't give it a perfect score. While Cynder was a crucial part of the trilogy, she unfortunately felt a bit sidelined in the Eternal Night, so I'm docking half a point for that. And I'll do the same for chemistry, if not only for the rushed nature of their romance, as it was the result of fan demand that they became a couple in the first place. Regardless, it's a ship that's still sailing all these years later, and it's easy to see why. And lastly, we have the silent but deadly stealth elf from the Skylanders series. Although she was a core character introduced in Spyro's adventure, what I mainly want to focus on here is her portrayal in the Netflix show Skylanders Academy, as that is where her and Spyro's relationship is the most fleshed out. Stealth Elf was the go-to voice of reason on Team Spyro, balancing her tough exterior with a mischievous streak. When her teammates got sidetracked, she stepped in to keep them in line. She was a skilled ninja warrior who took charge when it counted, all while dealing with Spyro and Eruptor's antics. I feel like a lot of people don't even realize that Stealth Elf was a potential love interest for Spyro, and even if they did, they probably forgot all about her once Cynder showed up in Season 2. I mean, at that point, her fans were all in, totally committed to both the character and the ship, so I can imagine that's where all their focus went. Perhaps some even got upset if our little ninja girl got a bit too close. But after watching some episodes, I realized that these two actually had a pretty great dynamic. Having grown up and trained together at the academy, they had this cute best friend bond. It felt really natural, and I think it would have made perfect sense to take it in a romantic direction. Despite being overshadowed by Best Girl over here, Stealth Elf was still a main character and played a key part in various story arcs throughout the show. However, her presence isn't entirely essential to the overall plot, so she gets a 4 out of 5 for significance. As for chemistry, as I said before, even though she and Spyro are just friends, much like him and Cynder in this iteration, it wouldn't have felt out of place at all for them to have been made a couple. And for that, I think a 3.5 is well deserved. Now for the results. In first place, what a shock, we have Cynder with a score of 9 out of 10. Negative reputation aside, I still believe she fits the bill to be Spyro's canon girlfriend. Coming in next is Elora with an 8 out of 10. With Reignited bringing the classic series back into the spotlight, I feel like this pairing is gaining a bit more popularity. After her is Stealth Elf with a 7.5. This one really surprised me. I wasn't expecting to find anything of note in this relationship, but it was actually pretty solid. Then we've got Sheila coming in fourth with a 4. She's a supportive friend who's there for Spyro when he needs her. And in dead last is Ember with a 0 out of 10. A ship built solely on the Son-Amy energy it seems to give, but doesn't actually give. But what do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree with my ranking? Leave a comment below and let me know. As always, don't forget to subscribe for more casual gaming content, and I will see you next time. Until then, this is Miharu, signing off.